All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for sticking around through lunch and returning. If you've made it this far, that means you absolutely have to stay for the happy hour. You can't stay for lunch and then leave before a 3 p.m. happy hour. So appreciate you being here and sticking with us. We're kicking off the afternoon breakout sessions. Our first session today, we're going to focus on a topic we're calling modern government service delivery. So this is really about government agencies that deal directly with citizens, with the population, delivering digital services to consumers, to all of us as citizens. So this is where, it's kind of a new thing for the government, given as individuals, our digital experience, we have expectations for that, right? We expect that applications that we use, whether on mobile devices or over the internet, we expect them to be elegant, intuitive. We expect them to be available when we want them to be performant. Security goes without saying. We have all of these expectations. So government agencies are finding themselves having to deliver that same experience, but they have some additional constraints as well. So today we've got a special guest here who I'm going to introduce in a minute. He's from the U.S. Postal Service, very unique government agency because they, act as both a, kind of a commercial company that's actually competing in a commercial space and tracking, profits and costs and everything like that. But then they're also directed by government mandates and directives as well. So the story we're going to talk through today is actually based on one of those government-driven directives with a very short turnaround. So first of all, I want to introduce Jerry Wheeler. Jerry is the Executive Director of CIO Architecture and Strategy for the U.S. Postal Service. Jerry, if you want to introduce yourself and the team that you run at the Postal Service.
Yep, so somehow I'm the unique guy, 3-letter acronyms, and I get this title that's like, okay, anyway. But yeah, so I work for the CIO, Preethamira, and basically my team, I've got several teams underneath me. We focus on architecture in a couple of different strata. So we got the business kind of things, the solutions, and then the technology that layers that underpin that. We've got a data science team that's doing practitioner, not just architecture. And that's probably, that covers it. It's like 60 architects. We've got a landscape of on the order of 900 applications. As you might imagine, some of them are older. Your earlier stories this morning, it was talking about the mainframe. The oldest line of code in Postal is in our payroll system from 1976. So, and it's still running, although it's on the chopping block. We're going through the process to identify and modernize and replace it. So we've been going through a lot of our major platforms, like the big ones of late has been logistics, the actual shipping, and several others that we're working to go through this process of taking 20-year-old apps and modernize.
All right, thank you, Jerry. Okay, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Eamon McCormick. I'm with Red Hat. I run our public sector technical sales team. So anybody with the word architect or specialist in their title, that's our team working directly with customers. Jerry, thank you for the background. We could probably do a whole session on that payroll system, but that's not today's topic here. So,
and not 3 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, right. So we at a high level, we introduced what we're going to be talking about, but your organization was given a directive with a very short turnaround to deliver a pretty comprehensive system that had enormous scale requirements. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
So it was on or about Christmas Day, this past Christmas, Louis DeJoy, the Postmaster General, got a phone call from the White House saying, would you be able to put up a ordering website to provide free test kits to the country and help us ship about 500 million test kits? And oh, by the way, can you have that site live by the middle of January? So that's like 3 weeks, literally. So that started the activity for a period of time. I do want to say the ordering site is kind of what we're focused on today, but that was just a small piece of the whole project. So we've got a video to kind of walk you through kind of what that looked like and how we accomplished it.
nation. Deliver 500 million COVID test kits to households across the nation. The timeline? 3 weeks. What happened next was amazing. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy
And you work it locally? We'd have to look at the magnitude of this.
quickly established a leadership task force and gave clear direction and goals. A quick, simple, and user-friendly online experience was created to handle 20 million orders per hour. A dynamic inventory turnover operation was created. Pallets of cartons containing kits were sent to 49 regional fulfillment centers. At peak, 18.3 million test kits were received a day, and we dispatched these to the fulfillment centers in 4 hours. At the 49 fulfillment centers, kitting operations were established, and employees were trained to execute a standardized end-to-end kitting and labeling operation. Finally, the USPS network expedited next-day and 2-day delivery through 2 phases of the operation. Taking on the challenge, the Postal Service leadership and employees rose to the occasion.
And we met the mission. In fact, we exceeded it. We ended up shipping 600 million test kits to over 78 million households across the nation, including territories, so overseas, et cetera. So, yep.
Raise your hand if you received test kits. Okay, that's nearly 100%. I didn't see any hands. Stay down. Yeah. Okay, so Jerry, let's talk about this project. So 3 weeks from inception to delivery to scaling to meet that kind of demand. In the past, maybe even as recently as 5 years ago, would you have been able to turn around a project that quickly?
So there's normal projects, and then there's this project. Given the focus we had, we would have made it work, but it wouldn't have been nearly as easy or as fast. 5 years ago, we were just starting to get into cloud-based and containerization things. Our standard platform would have been basically J2EE and such. We would have probably put it on something like our e-commerce website that you would see today. And in fact, we did. So given, I don't know if you guys remember, it seems like forever ago at this point, but at that point, Delta was winding down, Omicron was showing up. They had approved test kits for in-home testing, but people couldn't get a hold of them. And literally, especially in the first few days, it's like, this is impacting life and death kind of decisions given the ICUs and all that stuff. So failure was not an option. And our CIO, we actually ended up launching 3 different work streams to try and build 3 different capabilities to make sure at the end of the day we wanted 2 successful kit sites available because even clouds break sometimes, right? So that was the goal we were after. So Plan A, we called it, was literally take our e-commerce website, add a couple SKUs to it, presto, I've got test kits, away we go. And we did have that implemented in the first week, but there was misgivings about the ability to take that kind of database, Java, COTS product, and scale it literally 2 orders of magnitude. We weren't sure that was going to work. So in parallel, we launched Plan B, which was these simple ordering sites on the cloud. At the end of the day, again, the goal was 2 fully capable websites that would be available. So as far as provisioning go, so normal, well, let's back up. Given the focus we had, we could have done our usual stuff in a couple days, right? Our data center is pretty sophisticated with focus, and if you know what you want, we can roll environments for an application in a day or 2. Normal, it's a month month plus, because you got to get all the, how many servers, how many cores, how much memory, what are those mount points, get that all defined so the operations teams can build it. It's not the self-serve kind of capability you get with the cloud.
And that's before any code can be written, right? You've got to get in the queue to get the virtual machines. The machines get spun up. You need the storage, the networking, lay down the software layer. That part could take up to a month by itself, I imagine.
That would be normal.
Yeah.
That'd be normal. Again, in this case, we would have had it in a couple days.
Right. Okay. Okay. Excellent.
Okay.
All right. So moving on from there. So obviously, you don't just develop a capability like this overnight to deliver a system like this in 3 weeks. Did you have prior experience that actually gave you the background, the skill set, and the confidence that you could get something like that done? I don't want to hit it again. It's not going to advance.
There we go. We'd been over the last number of years working on modernizing one of our key platforms is our shipping platform. So USPS Ship, or other people know it as package platform. And that was our first foray into cloud, heavy containerization, all the things that we built the new site out of. Not 20 million an hour, but decent, Other things we do, because we're the Postal Service, right? We've got pretty good, talented people. We've got a large pool to draw from, and we do large every day. We've got 4 of the top 8 government websites that we support and run. And one of our Kafka systems handles over 2 billion events a day. So, large doesn't scare us. What we knew about this, though, is it was the scaling that we had to get right. We needed to go wide, and if we could get that right, we'd be home free. So, a couple things. For us, it was like, if you need it now, go with what you know. And because of our experience with the package platform stuff, all those components, we had pre-approved, hardened base container images. We had the frameworks, the development path, the CI/CD kind of automation in place. So it was lifting the bulk of that over in order to create the new site. There were a couple of other technologies we had to add, but that was it.
Okay, so let's dig into the technology story then. And I think what we're hearing is that the Postal Service has really become a technology organization, and from the text you've mentioned so far, it's definitely an open source organization as well, because you've mentioned Kafka,
Linux guy?
containers, Kubernetes, Linux, yeah. So this is in our wheelhouse. We love to hear it.
Yeah.
So can you go into a little bit more depth around some of the technologies that you leveraged, that you got that previous experience on the platform from?
Again, it was brain fade. So the central piece was Kafka, in that we needed to separate out what needed to be online for the user experience versus that other processing you need to do. We wanted to get as much as we could out of the user experience in order to optimize the scaling. You want me to go through all the decisions?
Well, yeah, if you want to go through some of those decisions, that'd be great.
So early on, first, day 1 or day 2, on our Plan A e-commerce site, people could either create an account and log in and order stuff, or there was guest checkout. And it's going to sound strange, but when we got to consensus that guest checkout was just fine, that simplified a lot of things. So we knew we could get guest checkout. We knew we had to be very wide to support the ingest of all the orders. And we needed to make sure we focused on being able to scale to support that. And then we wanted to use the mature tools we already had. So when you boil it all down, what the architecture looked like was we had a couple static pages that they sort of flipped through in the video. They were static, and we delivered them with edge caching with a content delivery network. The result of the submit click turned into one call to an API. that did the brunt of the work, and that was totally scalable horizontal, right? We set that on a Kubernetes platform, so we'd be able to adjust the pod counts up and down and do other kinds of tuning to get it as horizontal as we want. And since we're in a cloud, you don't have to worry about building more servers. You just click the knobs, right? After that, the Kafka would separate out, and then we had some back-end processes that we wanted to get a confirmation email out to the customer in a very timely fashion so they know they got the order in. We had to queue it up to a reporting database for metrics, and then we had to format it to send it downstream to the fulfillment systems. So all that stuff was done asynchronously coming out of the Kafka queue. In the user experience, we had two things we had to do. That's all we had to do. Is it a valid address? Okay. Now we wanted to do a velocity check. The requirement was one test kit per household, per address. So that's all we had to do. As soon as we validated those 2 points, then we queued it to Kafka and moved on. So it made it very scalable. And again, it's the pod count that drove everything.
So you were in crisis mode. Was there a learning curve at all for that team? 3 weeks is a short time frame. If you're trying anything new or things that people are not as experienced with?
There was a couple of things. So that velocity check was sitting inside an in-memory cache that we hadn't spent a lot of effort with prior. It is a part of doing through the work. I'm skipping ahead here. We found that out-of-the-box Kubernetes didn't scale evenly, right? We would see some containers 100% pegged, some very lightly used. So we found we had to add a service mesh in the middle. Basically it was Istio Envoy kind of stuff in order to use least connection to distribute it across the pods. And what we found is even though we added that extra layer in the middle, we gained 17% performance. So it was well worth it because you could distribute the load better.
So we've added another open source technology to the mix in Istio and Service Mesh, which is great. And we're going to talk about the scale in a minute, but up next, what about security, right? So delivering the functionality of the system is obviously a critical part of it, but you've got to do it in a way that's secure, especially if you're handling, I know you weren't handling PII, but you were handling citizen data as part of the system. So how did you all go about security?
So first off, we used our standard processes and templates. So when we do an external application, there's rules about how the network connectivity patterns work and other stuff. Again, we were using the stuff out of package platform that had the stigged and pre-hardened images. So that was covered. The deployment patterns and everything had had 90% of the security we needed built into it. But in order to meet the timelines, one of the things we found is, you guys know this, right? Normal process. You do something, you throw it over the wall, you wait a week, someone else looks at it, that goes over a wall, you wait another week. We had the security team actually participate and be talking with the development teams daily as they were designing and coding, got some feedback in the moment as they were doing that. And for some of our key process approvals, we were getting next day approval. So by expediting with the focus of the project, it really expedited getting it done.
Okay. All right. So to me, this is probably the most interesting part of this conversation is just the scale that you had to operate in. Right. You had 10 million orders per hour, 54 million orders in the first couple of days, hundreds of millions overall. We're just talking about the fact that the site is dormant right now, but might have to spin back up again in the future and handle that scale. I think we all know a lot of stories from government, from industry as well, where scale was kind of the last consideration and not something that was really properly prepared in advance. We're typically focused just on the function, and we assume the scale is going to work. You all went about it differently. Can you talk us through that?
So the first thing was, what's the target, right? The request to the Postal Service was, we need a website that'll meet 1 million orders an hour. And so internally, it's like, okay, people are dying, right? You really think 1 million across the whole country on first day is right? Of course, I about fell out of my seat when Preetha said 20 million, but that was the bar we set, is to be able to support up to 20 million orders an hour. If you do the math, 4 kits, there's 125 million orders, 7 hours we're done. But you don't know what that first day spike looks like, right? So we set a target at 20 million, that choice drove a lot of stuff down the road. So the design, the provisioning, how we laid it out, it gave us a target. As soon as we had a basic framework in place and operational, the next day they were firing up JMeter, trying to do the benchmarking, doing the testing, and they went through several cycles of testing the load, tweaking things, adding pods, changing configurations to understand how it all impacted overall throughput, so we knew we would be able to hit that 20 million number.
So you actually went beyond in terms of, beyond the written requirement, you went beyond in terms of testing for performance because you anticipated, okay.
Day one, it was fun because we didn't really know what to expect. And so we got the dashboards up, and it's quiet, and then the first announcement, the first news outlet said something, and we see this bump, and then another news outlet, and then the White House said something, and just watching the thing climb and seeing the latencies hold, it's like, okay, we're going to do this. We had 3 hours of sustained at over 10 million orders an hour is what we actually hit. And it didn't break a sweat, so it was kind of fun.
Were you all sleeping during this period at all?
No.
Okay.
Well, day three.
Day three, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah,
it proved itself.
Because we hit, like you said, 50 million orders the first 2 days. Our total volume was only going to be 125 million, so we were a third of the way through.
Amazing.
So
I was going to ask you, just in terms of, designing for scale, architecting for scale, what do you think are the specific technologies that you use that really enable that kind of scale?
3 or 4. Again, we really needed to there's asynchronous stuff you need to do and synchronous stuff. I did that backwards. What do you have to do in the user experience? Again, the validation and the velocity check. That's all we needed to do before we could tell them, yes, you get one, or no, you don't, right? So we got that through. We queued it into Kafka. And we have a lot of places where we're using Kafka to create pipelines of services, and you have layers of microservices between the topics to build your function. It helps you decouple, all that good stuff, right? So Kafka in the middle was huge. The ability to take the API, stick it on Kafka, and literally it's a couple of clicks to increase or decrease pod counts. So, day one, as you might imagine, we were significantly over-provisioned, but over time it let us watch what's going on and then scale back for cost management. Very easy. The service mesh was something new, but the ability to actually guarantee or have the system actually load out across your fleet of containers was big. Something you might not think about, though, is the cloud platform you're sitting on comes with built-in tools in the environments, right? So we need to do security monitoring. That's kind of built in. But we had a lot of people, including the White House, wanting to hear all our metrics, all our latencies, all that stuff. And because of the tools available built into the platform, it was very easy to create dashboards, to have, go into the weeds on the services, get the latencies, get the requests per second, get all that stuff, create a dashboard so if anything went strange, we'd be able to tell. And in fact, we had one, this was weird. We were watching, everything's stable, everything's running good, every 3 hours, we would have 1.5 minutes of latency, just quadrupling. And it shouldn't do that. And long story short, we found out in the data path there was the CDN every 3 hours would reload its cache, and that would create this latency, and then back. So the bottom line is by being able to build those dashboards, you can get the visibility, and it took me like a couple days to build all these dashboards to really get into the weeds on what's happening inside your system.
Did the CDN company know that they were creating that latency for you? Is that something you brought to their attention?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So Jerry, we've talked a lot about the technologies that you used. We haven't talked about your teams and kind of the approach, the process that you use. Do you follow any methodology? Are you agile? Do you have a lot of different stakeholders involved?
Yeah. So we, historically, waterfall, that normal stuff. For a number of years now, we've been moving towards agile, right? Agile fall, or whatever you want to call it. I think now, at this point, we've gotten to where several of the project teams are working really well with agile. This 3-week activity was perfect storm for agile, right? We had a very engaged product owner, was very particular about what they wanted to see. And every day there was new requirements or whatever coming through and getting feedback in the actual agile kind of thing. One of the things we found though was we found we needed to bring in a broader set of people. So normally you got a product owner, you got the developers and like this. Well, we started, some of the meetings we would have marketing, we would have legal, we would have all these other players in the discussion. And as we were talking about what we wanted to do, where we were headed, there's a couple times where we got some very valuable feedback from these other teams. It's like, you can't do that. What you're saying you can't legally say that, right? So instead of putting it out there and a week later being told, no, that's not going to work, we got it in the moment. So by bringing in a broader group of people as we were doing the development, it helped give us valuable feedback.
Okay. Did you have some way that you kind of fostered communication and access to the right information for that broader group?
So several ways, but one of the key things was we've had a fairly of late emphasis on architecture and design, and for this project especially, we needed to get the designs out there so we could all be playing off the same page and socialize it so everyone could see it. The security guys could see it. Developers obviously could see it. What that's led to, though, is as we do more and more focus on the standards, it's like, standards don't do you any good if the developers don't know about it. So we're focused on trying to get the standards and everything documented better. And as a fallout from this, there are some new technologies we used. How do we get those, turned into standards and communicated to the whole 2,000 developers we've got, and get that propagated and building catalogs. Right now, we've talked in terms of web services catalogs, but we also want to get the Kafka event streams documented so that developers can find it and make use of it. Because you can have all the reusable services in the world, but if no one knows they exist, they don't get used.
All right, so we're inside of 30 seconds left in this session. So final, very quick response. What's the one major lesson learned that you have that you'd share with the audience here?
I think if you can get your organization, everyone focused the same direction at the same time, it's amazing what you can do. For us, having the single focus put in front of us, here's the mission, this is what we need to get done by Luce to Joy on down. It was a lot of work, a lot of pressure, was a lot of fun because normal organizations, you got all these divisions and different groups. All those divisions just disappeared. We were one team working towards one target in order to get it done for the country. And so it was phenomenal. Good thing to be part of. But bottom line is we got it done and we delivered.
Congrats, Jerry. Thank you so much. It's a great story. We appreciate it. Thanks everybody for joining.